An article published by the New York Times entitled, "I Tried to Sell My House with a Chatbot," records the experience of the writer Stuart A. Thompson doing just that. Throughout the processes of selling his home, he seemingly replaces his real estate agent with a combination of Gemini, a real-life lawyer, and his human wife. Based on the article, it seems to have worked out for him. But is his experience an anomaly? Will AI continue to evolve until agents become obsolete? I hope not, and I don't really think so. But joining me today to think through the idea of artificial intelligence as a substitute for real estate agents will be Michael Pierce. Michael is a local broker as well as a past president of both KCRER and Heartland MLS. He's a great person to speak to this subject because, one, I know that he is an avid AI user, and two, because he's always at the forefront of technology and has been for a long time. I am so looking forward to hearing his thoughts. I'm Alex Gehring, and this is Kansas City Real Time. I am here with my good friend Michael Pierce, the broker owner of Seek Realty. Michael, how are you doing?
I'm doing well, thank you. Seek Real Estate.
Oh, gosh.
To be
I messed
really
it up.
specific, but that's
I messed
okay.
it up.
No, thank you.
You know, can you tell me something really quickly before we get into our topic? Realty and real estate. Why real estate rather than realty?
It's a personal preference.
It's a personal preference.
When I was a kid, I felt like all the real estate companies were realty, and I guess I have a disposition as I aged that realty seems informal and older, and real estate is some official thing. It's just bias.
What does realty mean?
I don't know.
Does it imply that everybody there is a realtor?
I don't believe so. No.
No.
The answer is no.
I didn't think so.
But realty is, to me, no knocking. I mean, you're really setting me up for failure here. Realty was just a personal preference when I started in real estate. I even joined companies whose names were real estate and not realty.
Yeah. Interesting. Well, that's not what we're talking about here today.
No. So side topic here.
Such a side topic. Well, one of the things that you and I have talked quite a bit about is the future of the industry. And in fact, you and I have had quite a few private conversations about the future of the industry. We've also had conversations on this podcast about the future of the industry. I thought that you were a perfect person to talk to about artificial intelligence and the way that it may impact some of the people inside of our industry. There's a New York Times article, and I know that you're aware of this. There's a New York Times article entitled, "I Tried to Sell My House with a Chatbot." It was written by Stuart A. Thompson, who is a tech writer for the New York Times. And I know that some of our members and some of our listeners have read this as well. I had it sent to me by a listener, in fact. So I am so curious as to your thoughts. But first, I want to get a little bit of background on your usage of AI. Do you use AI?
Yes, I use AI as a tool, as an ancillary tool to accentuate and maximize my own potential and my own education and my own execution.
And what does that look like?
That's a good question. I've used it for a lot of different things, but mainly to objectively monitor what I'm doing and ways to improve, to look at everything from the way I speak to the way I present to the way I function and operate my business, day-to-day operations. Just, it can be a sycophant at times. Mm-hmm. Like it can be a fanboy. You say, I'm really wanting to do this, and this is what I believe, and it'll say, yes, Michael, that's exactly what we should be doing. But if you really dig in and try to make it as objective as possible, I think it does help it puts a mirror up to what you're doing and how you operate, and you can kind of see yourself from a different angle and improve your business that way.
One of the things that I've been doing is recording my sales meetings and then putting the transcript in and then having it assess the way that I've presented in front of my agents. Is that kind of what you're doing? Or when you say that you're having it look at the content that you're creating or the way that you're speaking, how are you using it in that way?
Yes, I have done something similar to that where I'll have it watch my videos. My office meetings are also recorded, so I'll have it watch my videos and just pick up on things that I could have executed differently, or I have upticks here or filler words here. I probably could have answered this way. I sped up here and I sound anxious here, or whatever the case is. I can really analyze everything from the things I write to the things I present. And it can really dig in. If you give it permission to say, you're not going to offend me, I would objectively like your position on what you're seeing here or how we're operating, it really helps. And there's a lot of trial and error there. I've looked at it from a psychological perspective. So if you get off the phone with a client and you have an issue and they're heated, to understand what's their motivation, what's their underlying motivations, what are things that are occurring in that conversation that maybe I didn't see, to help get to the root cause and help see the way they see so I can overcome those objections better. Of course, objection handling is big on there as well, but just having conversations with it, I think in the long term will help you quite a bit.
You mentioned filler words. It's been really harsh with me on filler words. What were some of the filler words for you that it's pointed out? I'll share mine, but you have to share yours first.
Okay. One that I can think of off of the top of my head. Let me think. Well, of course, that something along those lines, or a variation of a sound between silence.
Everybody's going to have that.
Yes.
Yeah.
And then little things that I might say, right. If I'm in a conversation right.
Yeah.
Yes, right. You can just be quiet in those moments. It's okay to allow the person to continue to have the floor. You don't have to fill the 3-second empty space between their words.
What it pointed out for me, the first one was, does that make sense? And in one of my sales meetings, I said, does that make sense 37 times? Amber just gave me 37 times I said, does that make sense?
That's great, because 40 is my threshold before I'm offended. Yes.
37 is crazy. And then I replaced it when I realized it. I replaced it with right, instead of does that make sense? It's so crazy. But I don't think that anybody else would have told me that. You know what I mean? So I do think that it's a great use case for large language models. Which large language model are you primarily using?
ChatGPT is my bread and butter, my OG, but I'm using Claude as well. Those are the main two.
Okay. And are you using paid accounts on both?
Yes.
Do you feel more comfortable? It sounds like you're most comfortable with ChatGPT. Is there something that you use Claude for specifically?
I felt in my personal experience that Claude can be less of a fanboy. I know I've said that twice now, and more challenging to what you're saying. And sometimes I have to remind ChatGPT that I would like to be challenged if these beliefs are something that are limiting to myself. And I feel with Claude, I'm getting a little bit more natural objection to things that I believe or challenges that maybe ChatGPT wasn't giving me. And that's just my personal perspective. It may not be the same for everyone.
I do hear that regularly, though, and I feel like you can tell with ChatGPT when somebody is using it more than you can maybe with Claude. They all kind of have similar ways of structuring, like social media posts, especially. But I feel like ChatGPT forgets the instructions that you put into it over time. And those instructions, like you wrote, and it starts to forget them, and it can be really frustrating. But what I've noticed is that everybody kind of sounds the same now.
Yes.
Everybody that's putting these social media posts up, I think maybe you and I have talked maybe a little bit about this, but they all sound exactly the same. I feel like they sound like Elle Woods from Legally Blonde. Like if you read it with a little bit of a Valley Girl situation, it is going to sound so much like Elle Woods every time. Very catty, very fun, and not necessarily matching the demeanor that I think these mostly gentlemen want to convey.
Yes.
But so you like to use ChatGPT, you like to use Claude, you're no stranger to artificial intelligence. What about your agents? Do you feel like your agents are using artificial intelligence quite a bit in their work? And if so, how?
I hope so, because we created a project just for them that I created, where it's basically I've input the instructions to the chatbot, these are my philosophies of how to operate your business. These are things we should look at. These are our priorities. This is the way we do operate and don't operate. This is our belief system. And within the confines of those instructions, agents can pull up what I branded as seek mode. They can pull up seek mode in their language model, and it will basically be communicating to the agent in the way similarly to the way I communicate with them, with how I coach them and what our priorities are and what I try to look at and tend to look at in different scenarios and situations. And we're on our 5th iteration. As time goes, I just keep adding to the instructions, and agents say it sounds more and more like they're speaking with me or conversing with me. And I think that's helpful because we do, as brokers, sometimes have that principal-student type of relationship, even if it's not intended, where if they have a question that they feel is a dumb question, or this seems elementary, or I should know this, how do I handle this objection? I've been in the business 20 years, I should know that. Sometimes I think they're afraid or fearful to sound naive or dumb, so they don't want to ask the question. And it's easier to be in the language model and just say, the seller said they don't want to reduce the price. What should I say to them? And I think that at times they're afraid to ask the broker.
And you were kind of early with Seek Mode too. I mean, you launched that, like a year and a half, maybe even 2 years ago? You were kind of early. You're one of the first people that I knew that put together a custom GPT for their brokerage.
Yes. When I originally did it for myself, because similarly to what you mentioned before, I felt before they were saving memories, so the chatbot could get to know you. Before they were saving memories, I felt like I was reintroducing my priorities to the chatbot. Like, here's my company, here's what we're working on, here's what we'd like, here's our philosophies and belief systems. I felt like I had to give a little precursor before I was getting the answers catered to me specifically. So I would just write out a set of instructions and just copy and paste them before I started in basically working in ChatGPT. And after a while, it was really convenient to me. I felt, I think the agents could use this. So I started to cater those instructions specifically to agents. And over time now with memory, it just makes it even easier and better. So agents are no longer copying and pasting the instructions. It's just they click the link that I sent them, and it's automatically the updated version it goes into their language model.
So you were able to basically outsource a lot of broker questions, especially the simpler broker questions, to this custom GPT. I'm curious, do you feel like do you know of any agents that have started using custom GPTs for their clients?
Good question. To back up a second, I have it instructed to not actually answer what I would consider to be broker questions.
Liability questions.
Yeah, real broker questions have to come to the broker.
So this is more policies and procedures?
This is how to operate a business. My philosophies on that, how to present yourself. What's the role of the client? What's your role? How do we handle these type of situations? Things that are outside of the broker needs to know the law on this.
Understood.
So agents, I think, from my experience, are not doing that as much for clients, but I wouldn't say that's necessarily correct, because I have had agents say, and we encourage it a lot in the company, that they had a conversation afterwards with a seller, and then they went into ChatGPT or Claude and talked about the conversation and learned a lot. Or before they were going into a listing appointment, they knew from a pre-listing interview that these were going to be some objections, and they will lay it all out. So I do think that's happening. As far as creating your own project for them to operate within, I'm not familiar with many agents doing that, but I'm sure there are.
Yeah, and I think that there are definitely some brokerages that are trying to put things like that in front of the consumer. We know that there are brokerages that are working on things like that, and some that have already launched some things like that. So kind of interesting. Well, with all of that being said, obviously we know that we can use it for our purposes, right? There are consumers who feel like they might be able to bypass the real estate professional and use artificial intelligence to assist them in the sale of their home or the purchase of a home, and hence the article that we're talking about. I want to get kind of your first reaction to reading it. Do you feel like this is a real Do you feel like this is a real concern that anybody should actually have? Do you feel like this is something that's widespread, or that may be widespread in the future?
Certainly anything's possible. However, I think the caveat for me would be, what skill sets as a professional do you currently have? How skilled are you in your craft? I think if you are someone that knows your uncle and your uncle wants to sell his house and you put the sign in the yard and hope for the best, and that's your business model, then I could see where your business might erode slightly from more consumers using AI to get you out of the transaction. Do I believe in the value of a real estate professional that has high skill set to a degree that I would never, and in absolute terms, never recommend that you not go through a professional because the value is truly there? Yes, I believe that the value is there to a skilled professional, that it wouldn't make sense that your business would be eroded because an AI bot access to information, access to the listings, access to the data. For years we've tried to protect that as if that's some value proposition.
Right.
But if you get into these transactions and things go wrong and you see the level of expertise that's needed to navigate things that may seem fairly trivial to start, I think that you're going to be in a situation where you're going to be okay because the consumer will need you, and there is a value there that despite the commission the consumer pays, it is more valuable for them to use you, and they end up with more money in their pocket or more peace of mind or whatever their motivation is, because you are a true professional and you can navigate things that they can't navigate by finding answers on a chatbot.
Michael, you talk about a high-level professional. At the very beginning of the article, the author talks about his experience with a couple of real estate agents who came in, and I felt that the way that they were behaving was poor, or the way that they were talking to him was poor. What was your reaction to some of that?
It's a good question, because to me, there's a little confirmation bias there. How do you, with all human beings, how do you want to perceive this situation? Because yes, if you called up 100 realtors and 100 realtors showed up, you and I could pick apart who knows how many of those, because they are not true consummate professionals. They don't really know what they're doing. They clearly from the get-go don't know how to communicate with a client. They don't know how to assess motivations. They don't know all the things that through time you learn. So it's easy for that individual to say, I had this person over and this is all that they told me. But if he had a real professional sit in front of him, then I think it would be easy to say, oh, I saw the differentiating factor of this individual, something intangible that they brought to the table that this other individual didn't.
He says that, of course, this is all alleged. We don't know from these agents what they actually said, right? I mean, it's all for an article. But allegedly, one of these agents just said, you're probably going to lose money. Another agent said that they used just an algorithm to estimate prices, but it determined that the home was worth less than what he had paid. Obviously, you're right. I mean, using those two instances as your basis for the idea that all real estate professionals can be easily replaced seems pretty obvious that that's a confirmation bias type of a situation.
Yes.
Yeah. So from that point, he starts to talk about compensation. And obviously, we've talked a lot about compensation over the last couple of years, and we know that compensation is definitely something that's in the public eye, and probably something that's in the government's eye as well. And so, he was very specific about the amount of money that he felt he was going to save. But we don't actually know how much those agents were going to charge. I don't think. What's your view on the compensation piece of this? These people think that they are saving a certain amount of money by skipping a real estate professional. Do you feel like that this gentleman actually saved money by avoiding one based on his story?
I believe based on what he said, I believe he did not pay a commission. I do not believe that equates to him saving money. Saving money is you have to weigh the cost versus the value. And he's of the assumption, like many for sale by owner, in a way, this is a conversation I've had for 25 years. I can do it myself. And there's no question you can do it yourself. Almost anyone has the ability to do it themselves. And almost anyone has the ability to do it themselves without paying a commission. The question is, did you net more money in your pocket by exposing your home to a much more limited access, or much more limited marketplace, and not having the skill sets to be able to navigate the maximum price with the expertise that you know this home is commanding the maximum price it can actually command in this marketplace. So you can say my house sold for $500,000 or whatever. It was somewhere around there, I think. My home sold for $500,000. I saved X on commission. But the reality is, even if it sold for list price, with a real expert in front of you and a larger marketplace and a larger subset of buyers, there's a high probability that whatever you sold it for, it likely could have sold for more and would have sold for more. And then there's a lot of other caveats. Did you know that most homes in that price point right now are doing appraisal waivers or inspection waivers or non-refundable earnest money? There's a lot of things that go on within the transaction that are complicated that you can't look at if you've only done it once. And ChatGPT or one of the language models doesn't have that expertise. You and I can tell the seller 25 transactions this month and what has occurred and what we're looking at, and it's constantly moving and constantly fluid. Your value, that's your value, that you're coming in and you're paying me a fee, and despite paying that fee, I'm still going to net you more money in your pocket because of the access to the expertise and the marketplace that I have, that I bring to the table.
I think one of the things that stood out to me is that he still paid a brokerage. He still paid a brokerage.
I'm glad that you mentioned that, because the whole article, I commend him. He's trying to do things, and I commend him. The whole article is saying, can I use a language model? Can I use AI to replace a real estate agent? However, a real estate agent sold his house.
Yeah.
So you didn't use a language model to replace a real estate agent. You used a real estate agent to sell your house. You just weren't represented.
Right. And actually, he did have some level of representation because he hired a brokerage to put it onto the MLS.
Yes.
So, I mean, he still used all of the infrastructure that the real estate industry has put together over decades and decades, right? Maybe, like a century now? Are we like at that point?
That's 100 years.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Wow. So, but he still used all of the infrastructure that we put together. There were still agents involved. And then actually at the end of the article, you find out that he probably broke pretty close to even, because he found out that he could have listed the home actually for more, and he comes up with something about how, well, at least I didn't have to pay a commission, and that's better for everybody, that there wasn't a commission involved. What was striking to me, and especially as a heavy user of AI, maybe you can speak to this, he said he had to go through hundreds of prompts to get all of this squared away. Do you feel like the average person, this guy is specifically talking about tech for the New York Times, right? He writes about technology for the New York Times. Do you feel like the average person has the stomach to craft hundreds of prompts over the course of several weeks?
No, I don't. We didn't even get into what's the value of your time. The consumer, I'll remove that argument altogether. What's the value of your time? No, I don't think the average consumer wants to do that or would be willing to do that. I think that in this case, when you talk about, he did hire some sort of service on the listing side to list his home. That was a real estate brokerage of some sort. He had a buyer's agent for the buyers that purchased it. It seems to me that in this context, AI gave him the confidence to overshadow his insecurities and reflect back, and he's unable to reflect back poorly on his decision because of AI made him feel more comfortable with that decision. I don't know that marketplace. I don't know anything about it. Just based on what was there when he said things like, if someone's loud in a movie theater, I don't want to say a word. Or if I had a reservation at a restaurant and I'm not being seated, I won't say anything. I think that those are great examples of insecurities that I could see in the negotiation table that he can't see. He's unaware. He's not living in the same reality I am in negotiations. And so much of our decisions in a transaction are emotional based, not logic based.
Yeah.
And to hire a professional like myself, I would be able to provide the logic for him when he's still thinking emotionally. So I think he used a real estate brokerage to sell his home. He believes he did not pay a commission. I believe he thinks he saved money, which I don't necessarily agree with.
We don't
Maybe
know.
he did.
Yeah, it's hard to say.
Maybe he did. However, I think he used the language model to overcome some of his insecurities to make him confident and comfortable in the decision that he made. And
Absolutely.
That's ultimately what he did, not replace a real estate agent. He just replaced his own insecurities.
Yeah, he found somebody to talk to, just like a for sale by owner probably needed.
Yes.
Right. Yeah.
Like your dad, like you can do it, buddy.
Yeah, exactly. One of the things that he said was that the AI chatbot imparted more than facts, but something closer to wisdom. That's heavy. Do you think AI can or will ever be able to actually impart wisdom?
Yes, eventually. I think eventually. Right now, he's saying it almost provided wisdom, and I assure you that there are plenty of practitioners in his marketplace that have an extensive actual wisdom and expertise to back that up. So I think when you talk about wisdom, you talk about a knowledge that's profound to you. However, there's no expertise behind it. So I think the AI might be able to give you wisdom. However, we have transactions that are very complicated and complex, and a lot can go wrong. That wisdom is going to erode away when you understand the chatbot doesn't have any experience to back that wisdom. So if anything goes wrong, then you're talking to something that only can provide you question and answer and not expertise, which is, to me, the base of what is valuable of wisdom.
One of the things that he was doing too is using it to generate responses for text messages or emails that he was going to send to the buyer's agent to help in negotiation. I know that this was an early use for those LLMs. Is that still something that you recommend people do?
I don't. I talk to my agents all the time to say what you want to say, write what you want to write, and have the language model assist you in polishing that. Don't say, here's the scenario, write me a response. To your point earlier that so many people online you can see sound the same. And if I'm talking to my chatbot, I can find it going into that flow to where, and I don't know if it's energy conservation or what the motivation is, because it has the ability and has the memory and knows the way I like to be spoken to and what's constructive to me. And at times it does fall in that cyclical way of language model speak that so many people clearly in our industry are just copying and pasting and passing it off as their own intellect. However, it's very clear to someone that does use language models when that is occurring.
One of the things that I'm experiencing, and I know my agents are experiencing this as well, is agents just copying and pasting directly from ChatGPT and putting it into a text message to negotiate. I'm also having this happen with brokers. So when we go broker to broker and it's via email, I've had a couple of instances where it's literally just been something clearly copied and pasted out of ChatGPT, bullets that don't need to be there, unnecessary contrasts, like all of it. And I'm tempted sometimes to just put it into my LLM and turn it into like a Rock'em Sock'em Robots situation and let my bot, battle their bot. But I do think it's upsetting that that's in some ways, it's a little bit the environment that we live in. And it does occur to me that if that's all that the agent is doing in some cases, or worse, that's all that the broker is doing in some cases, yeah, unfortunately, I do think that those agents and those brokers probably could be pretty well replaced.
Yes, I think that there's a lot of points there. Okay, making this individual's argument for why he can replace a real estate agent through AI is the same thing you're doing if you don't believe you're truly an expert to your client and you're just copying what the AI says and pasting it, and that's your communication with the client, then you're advocating the same path this individual is,
yes,
which is I'm no better than AI. AI should be a tool to enhance yourself and your expertise. It should not be a tool you're using to substitute yourself.
I agree. I think there are too many people in the industry who for a long time served as a middleman to the data, right? You talked about how data has been kind of this quote unquote moat that we've used for a long time. There were people that basically their whole value proposition was that they were a middleman to the data. The last thing you want to do is be a middleman to a service that's already available to the consumer directly.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. And I do think it speaks to we're currently, you had talked about the Rock'em Sock'em robot analogy. I think that's a great analogy because I do feel as though we're getting to a point where emails are coming in clearly written by a chatbot, and you could just take that and have the chatbot respond, and you just have chatbots talking to one another. But the value, I think as we continue to go on, the value is going to be in can you take your interpersonal skills and communicate that effectively face-to-face or over the phone. So I think we're going to be in a situation where I'm in a transaction, I don't want to deal with talking to a chatbot the whole time that's masquerading around as a real estate agent. I want to talk to the real estate agent. And if you have high skill sets, you will want to get on the phone with that real estate agent, because if they don't have those true skill sets, then you can pick up on things in the communication that they can't and they're unaware of. So it just gives you that much more of an advantage. So don't rely on the chatbot to replace you and you never have to talk to people anymore. Use the chatbot to enhance you. Focus on talking to people. Focus on communicating with people. Focus on understanding people better. And in doing so, then you're using chatbot to not replace you, but enhance you, and it will never replace you as long as you keep up with that education of yourself.
One of the tropes, maybe trope is not the right word, but it might be, I don't know. But one of the things that was thrown around a lot, basically at every real estate conference for the last 3 or 4 years, has been that AI won't replace real estate agents, but real estate agents who are using AI will replace real estate agents that aren't. Which I've started cringing now every single time that I hear that, because I think that it sounds really stupid at this point.
Platitude.
It's a platitude.
It's a platitude.
Not a trope, but a platitude. Yeah. Do you believe that?
No, I think the industry certainly could eat itself in many different ways. I do think that the best thing that we can do for the industry is try and improve the quality of the product and service that we're producing for people. And as long as we focus on that, then we don't have to worry about being taken out of the equation. Will some transactions be eroded because someone has confidence that the answers to questions are the path to replace the agent and not see the value? Yes, I think that's certainly something that will occur to some degree, just like maybe IDX or the internet made for sale by owners a little easier to market their homes on now that you could do it online. All of those things can be true. However, again, if you're focusing on your skill sets and a true professional and providing a true professional service to that client, then you're going to be far off from anyone that ever has to worry about being replaced by AI. I know you've experienced transactions where those people, you've sold them for life. They will never, you couldn't convince them of any different, because the transaction's so emotional and there's so many variables, and sometimes people just want to feel safe, and you have provided them in a situation where they're financially stressed or they're getting a divorce or who knows the scenario, but it's often highly emotional, and you've walked them through and made them feel safe in a process that is very arduous to someone like that. Those people will always still exist, and those complications will always still exist. That I'm aware of, I don't see a path in our reality where ChatGPT or any of those language models replaces the ability for us to have adversity.
I guess what I'm curious about, do you feel like an agent that isn't using AI is going to be surpassed? Are they just automatically written off? Do you think that you have to be using AI in order to be able to continue in the future in real estate?
I think if you want to be as competitive as you possibly can, then yes. I think if you, Alex, in front of me, stopped using AI today, I think you would still be okay for a long time to come. However, you're going to continue to polish your skill sets, and we get rusty. So even if you're an agent that as you age, you say, well, I used to do 20 deals a year, and now I do 2 deals a year. Those 2 deals a year aren't providing you with the expertise and the knowledge base and the experience of communication that you had when you were doing 20 deals a year. So it's really important to continue to get in front of clients and get in front of people so that you have more of a proficiency. So I could see AI being something that if you're not using it, you're probably going to erode your proficiency more than someone that is using it. So I could see that being certainly a competitive advantage for someone that is using it consistently to stay sharp. But that could be the same thing with a lot of things in our industry.
I'm impressed at your ability to not say if you're not using it, you're losing it, which I'm so impressed that you didn't say that just now. I do think that your answer is interesting, and I'll tell you why. I think that a lot of people would have said the same thing about social media. In fact, I know that a lot of people said the same thing about social media. That, if you're not on social media and you're not actively marketing yourself on social media, you are losing business. There are people that thought that it was the next frontier in lead generation, and for some people it was, not for very many necessarily. And by the way, I admire you a lot for this. You kind of pushed back on that in your own way by basically turning off almost all social media.
Yes. I went from being named, the pitch named me, not that this matters, but they named me the best social media account in Kansas City.
Overland Parker. Right?
Yes.
Yeah.
And then a year or 2 later, I started doing real estate coaching and went completely cold turkey off social media for years. Now,
how many years?
I don't recall now, but 6 or more. And now I'm sporadically on it. But to your point, I think there's just we live in a complex world and a complex industry, and there's a lot of ways and a lot of different people doing a lot of different things. There's a lot of ways to make business, and there's a lot of ways to be successful in business. And just because someone is having success, let's say someone is social media heavy and that's where they originate all their business, that doesn't necessarily mean that if you don't do that, then you're not going to be able to make business. There's a lot of different ways to make business and create and maintain business.
My experience, frankly, is that it enhances some people and it harms others. There's some people I know who are using it who but they've diminished a little bit as a result of their usage. Their quality of work might not be as strong. Their communication skills have eroded. It is something that they're using for every decision in their life. And then there are others that are using it as a tool rather than a mommy. And it's kind of a different situation. I do think and I think social media was that way too. If you were using social media and you were somebody which this is like me, I still don't have any social media on my phone. If I'm on social media, it's on my work computer for work, right? And because I'll get pulled into those reels. I mean, it will feed me something that I will want to watch. There's no question about it. I can't have them on my phone, or I will not be productive that day. I do think that there are people that aren't really going to be productive with AI either, and I think that we'll learn more about that over time. I think that there's so many people are talking about it, and everybody's talking about how all these positive things that it's doing. I think it's difficult to see the people that aren't being helped by it, who think that they are, but who aren't being helped. And I think we'll learn more about that in the future, just like we have in social media.
Yes, and there's a lot of ways you can go with that. The first that comes to mind as you're speaking, to echo what you said, is the productivity sinkhole that can be, because it's been my experience in my career that no matter what the new tool is, the problem to me is agents don't necessarily want to do the things that cause them to really grow the business, which is getting in front of people. We tend to want to go into creative distractions and spend so much time on creative distractions. So a lot of agents will say, I'm a social media person, but they're a consumer of social media a lot. They're a consumer of social media much more than they are actually the creators of social media content.
Yes.
And just because you're a consumer, that all that time of consumption could have been used calling your clients or inviting your past client to dinner or asking them how their basement flooding is going or whatever it is.
Yep.
There's a lot, over the years, I've just seen a lot of different tools come into play where agents strictly focus on that, don't do the things that likely encourage the most growth in your business, and just use those as avoidance, creative distractions and avoidance to actually being proactive with their client database.
But as of now, with your use of AI, you don't see it following the trajectory of your use of social media, where you were one of the top accounts in all of Kansas City and a pretty heavy user, and now all of a sudden not using it at all, or not now, but going to. You don't see that trajectory happening for you with artificial intelligence, right?
Yes, I feel like I've already seen it. When you spoke to me, when we first started talking about AI, whenever that was now, 4 years ago, I was all in, this is amazing. And now I see it. I still want, it's nice to have a mirror of myself to look at and look over and say, hey, have you gained one too many pounds? In a figurative sense, to just have a little objective coach there with you from time to time. But as far as, and I do use it every day, but as far as do I go in and I'm really diving deep on something? No, that time has gone and passed. Now I just use it to accent my day. I'm not sure about this. Let me just double check on this and bounce a couple ideas off of it. But in general, I'm not sitting there in front of my computer for hours like I was when it was brand new.
I want to pivot just a little bit, still kind of on the same topic, but more association level conversation. So you've had lots of roles in the association over the years. You've been a multiple listing service president. You have been KCRER president. You have been KAR committee member, KCRER committee member, NAR committee member. You've been kind of very involved for a lot of years. Are you on any committees right now for the National Association?
No, I'm not at all.
Not at all. Which explains why I didn't send a picture of your Justin Timberlake looking headshot that the Kansas Association of Realtors has back from when you were first licensed in Emporia, Kansas.
When I was 11 years old.
When you were 11 years old. Did you attend midyear at all?
No.
Have you looked at the things some of the things that they did or talked about during midyear?
I do review the newsletters and emails that come in, yes.
So I guess my question to you is, what do you think the association's role is? Specifically the National Association. I don't think this is a KCRER thing. I don't think it's a KAR or Missouri Realtors thing. What do you think the National Association of Realtors role is moving forward as this world kind of evolves? We've got these new tools, and we're going to make an assumption that because of these tools that the consumer has access to, the less professional agents may, struggle and may fade away, right? What do you think the National Association of Realtors' role is?
I thought earlier when you asked me why I like the word real estate over realty was a loaded question. That's nothing compared to this question. I think a national legislative presence is good for NAR. I think providing ancillary services to brokerages and franchises and things of those sorts are good in certain scenarios. That is pretty much it.
I want to talk about the realtor brand, because I know that that's a big thing that they talked about. one of the things that's been a little bit controversial is it sounds like they're going to enforce realtor brand usage rules to a greater extent, and really clarify that a realtor is not a profession, right, but a member of a trade organization. Do you think, and this is you're going to feel like this is a loaded question as well, but there's a reason why I'm asking it. Do you feel like there is a measurable difference in the consumer's eye between a realtor and a real estate professional?
I do not. I don't believe that the average consumer understands the difference. And I know the argument to that would be we need to make the consumer know the difference. Mm-hmm. I think if we focus on the product that we put in front of the agents to make them better at their craft, truly better at their craft, then we wouldn't have some of the issues that we have now. I believe that sometimes we try really hard to focus on making sure that we're valuable instead of really listening to what the real estate industry needs and just filling those voids instead of trying to create more importance for ourselves than what we really are.
Do you feel that the Code of Ethics needs to be updated to include usage rules for artificial intelligence?
Yes.
Yeah. Me too. But I don't. But I think it's weird that maybe they're talking about it and I just don't know. Mm-hmm. Is that something that's being discussed?
Not that I'm aware of, but I'm not as involved as I was.
Yeah, yes. Maybe it's being discussed somewhere. It seems to me that with AI being used so heavily, and with it being used in some ways that probably aren't great necessarily for our industry. And people listing photos using artificial intelligence and not disclosing, that it was generated using artificial intelligence. He took out an entire wall and all of this stuff. It does seem like some of that probably needs to be addressed. And it just seems that something like that maybe is a little bit more beneficial to us all than focusing on the realtor brand usage.
It's very easy, I feel as though, with these large organizations to try to operate as a utility or try to operate in a punitive manner instead of, it comes from a place of scarcity. Mm-hmm. If you come from a place of abundance, then you're not worried about how do we become more strict or how do we clamp down on this or that. I think that if you come from a place of abundance, then you're looking at things differently, and the results that you provide are different results because you're not even looking at things the same way. And a lot of what I've seen over the years in NAR and the MLS world is more punitive. How do we prevent people? How do we ensure people have a moral compass? How do we prevent people from professionally harming their own image? I think it's very difficult to try to rein all of that in, and there are other ways that we can promote our value proposition as an industry and help individuals on the streets, the real estate industry, individuals on the streets, that doesn't involve us being so concerned with restrictions. If I wanted to sell a widget on Amazon, I put the widget on Amazon, and I do that because it's very beneficial to my business. Amazon doesn't have to give me 3,000 rules of what I can and can't do about the widget. Mm-hmm. I follow the steps in the system. I put the widget on there, and I would never stop using Amazon, and I'd advocate for Amazon because my widget sells so well on there. If we provided that level of service in some way to the real estate agent, then we would never have to worry about half the stuff we worry about on that level.
All right. Last two questions. Last set of questions. What do you think the number one issue is that consumers are focused on surrounding housing?
Affordability.
Do you feel that, I agree, do you feel that artificial intelligence can help in some way with affordability?
I mean, if Elon Musk makes these humanoids that have artificial intelligence and can build houses for free, then certain things like that. But in general, I feel as though it's a real uphill battle because of the dynamic of how how housing is and what is necessary for it, material costs, labor, and obviously so many people have used that as almost like an ATM machine for their life, the equity in their home, and that's the security and their financial security for their lives. It makes it really difficult for this trajectory of value growth to slow down. I don't see a easy answer aside from homeowner. I don't like this, but maybe one day homeownership that's like a familial heirloom in a way, and a lot of people rent. I don't want that. It's just we're on a trajectory that's unsustainable where two people fresh out of college that have a good job making decent income are going to really struggle to try to enter in a lot of marketplaces.
I feel like our friend Stuart A. Thompson, who, to be clear, I don't have any idea if he might be a wonderful man, okay? But I think that he would do well to recognize that agents probably aren't the thing that's causing an affordability issue. If anything, we're heavily invested in solving an affordability crisis that we're all experiencing, and trying to figure out ways to remove the level of problem solving that many of us could bring to that problem, right?
Yes.
Is probably massively missing the point.
I believe so. I think there's a lot of other things that clearly to look at. And in the simplest form, the process is very complicated. If you see the real estate professional, and a good professional would be, as someone that lessens the complication of that process significantly, then that makes it less expensive. If we remove them and we start to complicate the process, whether it be 100 chat commands to navigate it yourself or whatever the case is, if you remove the agent, the process gets that much more complicated, which in general would mean it's going to be much more costly as well. It's just going to be dispersed out in different manners.
Love it. Well, Michael, thank you so much for being here with us today, and we'll see you next time.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Thank you.